Welcome to This Explainer. On Monday, May 18th, 2026, two teenage gunmen walked right up to the Islamic Center of San Diego, which is the city's largest mosque, and opened fire. Today, we're diving deep into the anatomy of this horrific attack. We're looking at a devastating intersection of online radicalization and real-world violence. But this isn't just about understanding what happened on that single Monday. It's really about tracing a century-long buildup of an extremist ideology that is somehow arming teenagers with unimaginable hatred. 3 men died that day. But here is the thing you absolutely need to know. Before they died, each one of those 3 men ran toward the danger instead of away from it. San Diego Police Chief Scott Wahl called their actions nothing short of heroic, saying they undoubtedly helped prevent more deaths. At the same time, he acknowledged the stark reality of the situation, calling it every community's worst nightmare. A place of peace, reflection, and community was completely shattered. Section 1. The 2026 Mosque Attack, Tragedy in San Diego. Let's look at the timeline because it's incredibly fast-moving and chaotic. Get this. A full 2 hours before the attack, the mother of one of the suspects frantically called 911. She reported her son was missing, along with her vehicle and several of her weapons. So police were already actively searching for these teens when the 911 calls started flooding in from the Islamic Center right around midday prayer. It was absolute chaos. Dispatchers even got a call about shots fired from a vehicle 2 blocks away, where a landscaper miraculously survived just because a bullet deflected off his helmet. By the afternoon, the devastating reality was clear. 3 victims were found dead, and the 2 suspects, 17-year-old Kane Clark and 18-year-old Caleb Vasquez, were also dead from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds. This is their story, and it is the story that must be told first. Amin Abdullah, Mansour Kaziha, and Nader Awad. Amin was a security guard who didn't hesitate. He engaged the shooters directly. Meanwhile, Mansour and Nader purposefully drew the attackers out into the parking lot, pulling them away from the school inside. Because of them, the children were evacuated safely. Not a single child was harmed. They lost their lives, but their heroic sacrifice stopped an absolute massacre. Moving on to Section 2, the Poway Connection, a terrifying pattern. Now, if you know the history of the San Diego region, you know this is tragically not an isolated incident. The chilling parallels between this 2026 mosque shooting and the 2019 attack on the Chabad of Poway Synagogue are impossible to ignore. Back in 2019, 19-year-old John Ernest walked into a synagogue, killed 1 person, and injured 3 others. 7 years later, we have 17 and 18-year-old shooters leaving 3 dead at a mosque. In both of these cases, we're dealing with young, radicalized males targeting local places of worship. And the overlap is even more direct than you might think. Just a month before the Poway synagogue attack, John Ernest actually targeted the Muslim community. He attempted to burn down the Dar-ul-Arqam Mosque in Escondido in the middle of the night. He even spray-painted graffiti on the driveway praising the Christchurch shooter. This cross-pollination of hate, where an extremist targets Muslims 1 month and the Jewish community the next, shows a sweeping extremism that views pretty much any non-white or non-Christian community as a target. Which brings us to Section 3, Roots of Radicalization, Digital Ecosystems. So the big question, how did 2 teenagers get here? Well, Kane Clark and Caleb Vasquez left behind an extremist manifesto that was violently anti-Islamic, anti-Semitic, and anti-LGBTQ. They left racial pride writings in a suicide note, and they even had hate speech written directly on their firearm. To understand this, we can look at a 2025 report from the George Washington University Program on Extremism. They analyzed manifestos from mass casualty attackers all over the world, and they found that despite being separated by years and continents, the ideological glue binding these attackers together is exactly the same. Section 4, Great Replacement Theory Explained. At the core of that ideological glue is the Great Replacement Theory. Coined around 2011 by French author Renaud Camus, it's essentially a massive conspiracy theory. It claims that a cabal of global elites is deliberately orchestrating the destruction of white civilization via non-white immigration and declining birth rates. It merges old American ideas of race suicide with European fears of an Islamic Eurabia. To these radicalized young men, demographics aren't just shifting naturally. They believe it's an urgent, apocalyptic plot. They convince themselves they are soldiers making a final stand. And as you can see here, this idea didn't just pop out of nowhere on the internet yesterday. Actually, scratch that. It's a century-long buildup. We're talking a direct line from early 20th century eugenics straight to modern internet radicalization. In 1901, Edward Ross coined race suicide, then Madison Grant in 1916. By the 70s and 80s, folks like Jean Raspail and David Lane were pushing concepts of white genocide. Renaud Camus basically just repackaged 100 years of racist anxiety so it was perfectly suited for the digital age. When the GWU researchers dug into these manifestos, they found 4 core themes repeating like a twisted copy-paste job across the globe. 1. The belief that non-white immigration is an existential threat. 2. Deep-seated misogyny, usually a weird obsession with controlling birth rates. 3. Viewing this replacement as a global conspiracy. And 4. The delusion that a racial holy war is the only solution. This is the exact toxic mix that explicitly drove the violence in San Diego. It's textbook stochastic terrorism. Finally, Section 5, Community Mourning, the Human Cost. Returning to the immediate aftermath, the human cost of this online radicalization is just devastating. Imam Taha Hassan summed it up perfectly. It is extremely outrageous to target a place of worship. It's not a battlefield. A mosque is supposed to be a place of total peace. Yet, his community was thrust into mourning, forced onto a literal battlefield, entirely because of generalized hate rhetoric fed to 2 local teenagers. The shockwaves of this didn't stop in California either. Major police departments completely across the country, like the NYPD and LAPD, immediately ramped up deployments to protect vulnerable Muslim communities. They didn't even have specific threats, but they operated out of an abundance of caution. That's the reality of stochastic terrorism. An attack on a specific community anywhere creates justifiable fear everywhere. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up. What does it say about America in 2026 that a house of worship needs armed protection, when ordinary men like Amin, Mansour, and Nader have to sacrifice their lives just to protect children at prayer, and when major cities need massive police deployments for people to safely worship? We really have to ask ourselves some deep questions about the environment we're fostering. The ideology of hate has clearly metastasized from the internet right into our neighborhoods. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep seeking.